Let us now continue our exploration of participles when I conjugate them for weak letters, gutturals, silent letters. In this final class of shorashim, there is a vav or a yud as the center of my shoresh. For example, shuv. You see I have a vav in the middle. Kum, a vav in the middle. Shir, a yud in the middle. Bo, a vav in the middle. Din, a yud in the middle. Why would these shorashim get their own unique class of conjugation? Because if you look at the shorashim, the middle letter, the vav or the yud, is functioning as a vowel. It's helping you pronounce the other consonants. In Hebrew, we call this an aim kriya. Because I don't have all three letters of the shoresh functioning as actual bona fide consonants, it's going to affect the conjugation. In fact, you saw this last semester in past tense. How would you conjugate a shoresh like bo in past tense? If you remember, right, the vav slipped out, right? So it became bati, okay? Bati. The vav totally went away. Have the past tense conjugation of shuv, right? Notice in all these cases, I have the suffixes that I'd expect of suffix form of past tense, right? But what is missing? The vav of shuv slipped out. I've heard people explain this as thinking about the yud or the vav being so skinny, right, that it just slips away. That's why it's not seen in past tense, and we're going to see in a moment in participles. When I first try to conjugate a shoresh that has a vav or a yud in the center of the shoresh, I'm going to first try to parallel what we did before. So let me take a shoresh like shin mem resh, a healthy shoresh, and let me put my o in the middle, right, mecholam in the middle, and then I get my seresh, shomer. So let me take an ayin vav shoresh, bo, right, bo. Now you can see it's going to be a problem if I try to put the cholam in the middle. Why? Try to sound out this word. When I have two O's in the middle, bo, right, it doesn't work. I cannot have two vowels in a row. It doesn't work. I like to think about this like people do in math. In math, you have a situation where you have, let's say, negative 5, right? So what do you do with a double negative, right? They cancel each other out, and it becomes a positive. So what happens in the case of bo, and if you look, the vavs do look remarkably similar to negative signs, right? They cancel each other out, and I'm just left with my healthy letters of my shoresh. So I have ba, ba'a, ba'im, and ba'ot. And you'll see, right, that I have no suffix for masculine singular as I'd expect. I have my im suffix for masculine plural and my ot suffix for feminine plural that I'd expect. But the kamatz hey of ba'a is a little bit more surprising. Why is that the case? Because a typical shoresh, right, has what suffix? Usually I get the shomeret pattern. I get my et suffix. And where does this kamatz hey of ba'a come from? Does anyone remember? If you guess that it comes from the old biblical Hebrew of something like shomera, you are correct. And we saw this with the lamed heys of ola, right, where we saw that feminine singular got the kamatz hey as well. Now, there's a big problem when I'm looking at a pasuk that has these participles in it because they look remarkably similar to something else. Okay, let's take the shoresh ba. Okay, so ba can be a participle like I have right here, right? It's for masculine singular. Okay, what else can ba be? Think back to what we said earlier in this clip. What else can ba be? It can be past tense. Right? Past tense for whom? Past tense for who? So, ba could be a past tense who, or it could be a masculine singular participle, right? It looks the same. It's conjugated the same. The trup is the same. Everything's the same. And even feminine singular has a problem. So if we look at feminine singular, right, here we have ba'a, right, here you see the feminine singular, right? Ba'a, right, can be past tense for who? Past tense for he, for she, right? Or it could be a participle for feminine singular, right? I have my kamate suffix, so it could be either past tense or it could be a participle. How am I going to differentiate between these? And here we have the chart in its entirety, where we see the past tense, right? It looks the same for who in the past, and for masculine singular for a participle, right? And she looks the same in past as feminine singular looks in with a participle. When it comes to ba, right, it could be he came, right, past tense, or a masculine singular participle. And context is the only way to differentiate these words. But I always ask whenever someone says use context, which context clues should I look for, right? How am I going to know which one it is? It's important to note that when I'm dealing with past tense, I usually see a suffix. So ani becomes ani ba ti. Ata it becomes ata ba ta. It's only who, right, that is ba. But when I'm dealing with a participle, ani, ata, and who are all conjugated as ba. Ba, ba, and huba. Therefore, if I ever see a pasuk that says ani ba, anochi ba, or ani ba, ata ba, it has to be a participle. If I saw ani bati, ata bata, I know it has to be past tense. My only major question comes when I'm dealing with who. Is huba going to be past tense, or is huba going to be a participle? Let's put that question on hold and see how the ani and ata can play out in an actual pasuk. So here on the bottom, I have a pasuk from Shmuel. This is the story of David and Goliath. Vayomer David el ha-plishti. David said to the Plishti, who is Goliath, Ata ba elai becharev. So is ata ba past tense or a participle? So look at the chart above. Where would we fall? Ata ba would be a participle. Had it been past tense, it would be ata ba ta. So it's you, I have a speaker, so it's you come or are coming, Eli to me, becharev, with a sword, right? You come to me to fight with a sword is the implication. The anochi ba. So anochi ba, again, is this past tense or a participle? So let me look at the chart above. So if you look above, we have anochi ba would be a participle. Had it been past tense, it would be anochi ba ti. So, and I have a speaker. So, and I am coming, or I come. So you come to me with the sword, and I am coming to you, or I come to you, b'shem Hashem, with the name of God. In other words, you come to fight me with a sword, and I come to fight you with God's name as my weapon. Okay? Now we have to explore that last question about how to differentiate huba and huba. There are some clues I can use to figure out if something is a participle. If I have the word ain before something that looks like a participle, chances are it is a participle. So if I have ain ba, right, that would tell me it's a participle. When I'm dealing with past tense or future tense, I'll often see lo or al if it's future tense. Okay, those would be the alternatives if I'm dealing with something that's not a participle. Okay, so ain would be a good indication. Another clue would be the hey prefix. So if I have haba, right, haba would tell me that's a participle because I cannot have a hey before a verb. A third clue to look for in the psukim are the other verbs in the pasuk. Generally, when there are past tense words, A word like ba would be a past tense word. And when I have future tense words, a word like ba would be a participle. It would be future. Now this is my last resort clue to look for. First I would look for if I have an ata, an ani, like aniba, or anochiba, ataba. Then I'd look for ainba, haba, and when all else fails, so I have this last clue to look for the other verbs in the pasuk to figure out if it's a participle, right, or if it's past tense. Let's see this in action. In number 18, we have the story where Yaakov has already taken the blessing from Esav, and Esav comes to get his blessing from Yitzchak. He is not aware that Yaakov took the blessing. So Vayomer Yitzchak, Yitzchak said to Esav, Ba'achicha bir mirma, vayikach birkatecha. So my question is this word ba tense or participle? So let's look at the clues that we mentioned before. So do I have an aniba or anochiba? Do I have an ataba? No, I don't. Right? Do I have an ainba? No. Do I have a haba? No. So when all else fails, I look at the other verbs in the pasuk, and specifically the statement here, the statement that Yitzchak said. So ba'achicha b'mirma vayikach. So vayikach is past tense. Right? So chances are ba here would be past as well. So it has to be past tense for 18. Okay, let's look at 19. So we have Moshe speaking to Bnei Israel right before they go to Israel. So we have a quote, right? Ki ha'aretz asher atzah ba shama l'rishta, lo ke'aretz Mitzrayim hi. Ki ha'aretz, because the land asher atzah ba. So my question is about this word ba. So is ba past tense? Or is it a participle? So look at the word that immediately precedes ba, ata ba, right? If it were past tense, it would have been what? Ata ba ta, right? So just look at my first clue, right? Ata ba ta would have been past, so we know this is a participle. So and of a speaker. So because the land that you are coming or will come there to inherit her, the Rishtah, to inherit her. Lo ke'aretz Mitzrayim, she is not like the land of Egypt. It is not like the land of Egypt. This land is not like the land of Egypt. Remember, Eretz is feminine. Okay, so here we have a participle. Now, so let's look at number 20. V'richo sogeret. So sogeret is a participle, just a regular sogeret. Yericho is the name of a city. So cities are feminine, right? So Yericho, the narrator, was closing. Mipnei b'nei Israel, so they were closing their gates, they're closing the city from before b'nei Israel, from before the Israelites, from the face of b'nei Israel. Ein yotzei, so yotzei rhymes with like shomer, right? We said that ein negates the participle. So ein, there was no exiting, there was no leaving, no going out. The ein ba. So I have a question about the word ba. So let's look at my clues here. I have ani ratah. Do I have ani ratah ba? No. Do I have ein ba? I do, right? Because ein negates the participle. So this is a participle. So there was no exiting, no going out, the ein ba, and no entering. So no one could enter the city and no one could leave the city. So there was no going out and no entering. Just to review, this is the word ba. Okay, how we differentiate ba when it's past tense or when it's a participle. Now we're going to look at the feminine singular for ba'a. There's a different clue that I can use for ba'a. How do I differentiate ba'a when I'm dealing with past tense or participle? So while the exact letters are used for both, as well as the same exact nikudot, there is actually something else that's different when I'm talking about past tense or a participle. And that is because we're dealing with biblical Hebrew. We have something else in the pasuk that helps me differentiate between these two. What else do I have in a pasuk when I'm reading it? Think about it. I also have my trop, my ta'amei hamikra. So my trup will either be related to the bet letter or it would be related to the aleph letter. When would it be past tense and when would it be a participle? So the trick is to look earlier in the word, right? If it's earlier in the word, it's going to be past tense. Conversely, when it's later in the word, it's going to be a participle. So please keep in mind that this trick about the Ta'ameh HaMikra, the trap, only works for this Ayin Vav Ayin Yud Shoresh for feminine singular. It won't work for any other form like Yotze or even Ba, right? It can only work for this form, feminine singular, Ayin Vav Ayin Yud. Let's look at number 21. In Megillat Esther, someone is reminding the king about Queen Vashti's actions. Hamelech Achashverosh, the king Achashverosh, Amar said, L'havi et Vashti Hamalka, to bring Vashti the queen, Lifanav, before him, Velo Ba'a. So my question is, the word Ba'a here, right? Is it past tense or is it a participle, right? Past tense for she, a participle feminine singular. Okay, so I look at my trap, right? Is my trap earlier in the word or later in the word? It's earlier in the word, right? You see it's related to the bet. So if it's earlier in the word, then it's past tense. Okay, so and she did not come, it's just past tense. Let's look at number 22. It's in Bereshit Perek Chavtet. After a long journey, Yaakov arrives at Haran. Vayomer lahem Yaakov, so Vayomer singular, Yaakov said to them, Hayadatem. So can you say you know? No, it's a Hey HaShe'ela, right? This is a Hey HaShe'ela, just couldn't have that classic Chataf Patach because of the Yud Shva. You can't have that in a row. Doesn't work. So you get this just regular Patach. So do you know Lavan ben Nachor? Vayomru, and they said, Hine Rachel bito, behold Rachel his daughter, Ba'a im hatzon. So again I have Ba'a with my trup where? My trup is later in the word. So if it's later in the word, it's a participle. So here, behold Rachel his daughter, either is coming with the sheep or will be coming with the sheep because I have a speaker. But notice that I also have the word hine here. So hine before a participle describing the future would make it imminent, right? So either it's Rachel is coming with the sheep or Rachel is will be coming very soon with the sheep. Let's keep reading. Odenu midzaber imam. He was still speaking imam with them. Rachel ba'a im hatzon. So notice, right, my trup, my Ta'ameh HaMikra for ba'a. So I have my revi'i, I have my trup earlier in the word. So if I have my trup earlier in the word, what do we say? It's past. So he was still speaking with them, and Rachel came with the sheep that was her father's, Kiro Ahi, because she was a shepherdess. Here I have 3 more psukim that have the shoresh bo when I'm either dealing with participle or past tense, and I have to figure it out. Okay, so let's look at number 23. Ve'ela shmot b'nei Yisrael. So shmot b'nei Yisrael is a triple smichutz, triple construct form. So these are the names of b'nei Yisrael, of the sons of Israel. Haba'im Mitzrayma. So what's Mitzrayma? Mitzrayma, that's the hay of direction towards Egypt. So my question is about the word haba'im. So is this past tense or is this a participle? So what about this word tells me if it's past tense or participle? So first of all, notice I have my hey hayedia, the hey meaning the, which tells me it's going to be a participle. Also, I have my suffix im. Right? Im is a participle suffix, like shomer, shomeret, shomerim, shomerot, right? You don't have that in past tense. So I have 2 clues here that tells me I'm dealing with a participle. Next, I have to ask, because I have a participle, is it a noun, a verb, or an adjective. So immediately I could cross a verb off the chart because I have a hey prefix. So is it a noun or adjective? I look to the word right before it. It's a definite noun. It's a name. So I have a ha-ha rule. What do I insert? So that means it's an adjective, right? A ha-ha rule means an adjective. And I insert who or that in the middle. So these are the names of Bnei Israel who were coming towards Egypt. Okay, let's look at number 24. Vayomer Moshe el ha'elokim. Moshe said to God, Hine anochi ba el bnei Israel. Here I ba el bnei Israel. So ba could be past tense, or it could be a participle. Let me look at the rest of the pasuk to figure that out. Hine anochi ba el bnei Israel. I blinked to bnei Israel. Va'amarti. So let's look at the word va'amarti. So amarti is past tense, I said, but here I have a vav right before it. And generally, a vav before a past tense word flips it to future tense. So I will say to them, so that's the future, Elokei avotechem shalachani alechem. The God of your fathers, shalachani, he sent me, shalach oti, it's a contracted word, he sent me alechem to you. The amru. The amru is, again, a vav hahipach. Amru is they said. The amru, any vav before a past tense word, generally changes it to future tense. So they will say to me, what is his name? So let's go back to Hine Anochi Ba. So when I have Anochi Ba, I have a very powerful clue in determining if this is going to be past tense or participle. Had it been past tense, it would have been Anochi Ba Ti, right? Anochi Ba is the participle form. Okay, so Anochi Ba could be either present or future tense, but when I look at the rest of the pasuk, I see that the rest of the pasuk is written in future tense. So I will come to Bnei Israel very soon, because of Hine, I'll come to Bnei Israel very soon. The Amarti lahem, and I will say to them, dot, dot, dot. The Amruli, and they will say to me, dot, dot, dot. So Anochi Ba is a participle describing the future. Let's look at number 25. Vaya'alu Sha'ul v'na'aro ha'ir. So Sha'ul, Saul, and his lad went up ha'ir towards the city. Hema ba'im b'toch ha'ir. So Hema is just a lengthened form of Hem. So they, ba'im. So is ba'im past tense or a participle? So I can tell right away that it is a participle because I have my im suffix. Okay, I have my im suffix, shomer, shomeret, shomerim, shomerot. Okay, so, and I don't have the im suffix for past tense. So they, I have a narrator, they were coming, or they were entering, b'toch ha'ir, in the midst of the city, v'hinei Shmuel, and behold Shmuel, yotzei likratam. He, again, I have a narrator, so he was going out, he was exiting, he was leaving, likratam, towards them. Likrat, right, is towards, or it could sometimes mean to greet. The mem is them. Okay, likrat is either to greet or towards. It's not likro. Likro is to call. Okay, pasuk yudchet. Vayomer Shaul el Shmuel. So Shaul, Saul said to Shmuel, to Samuel, Hagida nali, tell me please. A is a shortened form of apho, which means where. Ze beit haroeh. So where this beit haroeh. So you know from words like Beit Midrash, Beit Sefer, right? Beit is a smichut, right? Noun of noun, right? It's the first word of the smichut chain. So Beit haroeh. So haroeh is a participle that is a noun. So when we have a participle that's functioning as a noun, we ask who is doing the action. And we mentioned you can generally add an suffix to the action. So in this case, it would be a C-er. In English, we just, make this one E. So it would be C-er. Okay? So I translate the pasuk, Hagida nali, tell me please, A, Efa, where, Za, this, Beit Haro'eh, the house of the seer. In other words, he wants to know where the Navi lives. Vayomer Shmuel el Shaul. So Shmuel said to Shaul, Samuel said to Saul, Anochi Haro'eh. I am the seer. Here we have a participle that's functioning as a noun. I have my hey prefix, right? I do not have a definite noun that comes before it, which tells me that I have a noun. Okay? So now let's look at two more examples in the psukim. So let's look at number 26. Yehoshua Zakin, Ba Bayamim. Okay? So Yehoshua was old, Ba Bayamim. So my question about Ba, is it past tense or is it a participle? So I look at my clues in the pasuk, right? I look for an ani or ata, and I see it's not there. I look for an ein, and there's no ein. I look for that hey prefix, meaning the. It's not there. So as a last resort, I look for the other verbs in the sentence. I only have one verb here. That's zakin. So that's past tense. So chances are ba here would be past tense as well. They'd be equivalents. And in fact, the words are parallel. Zakin and ba b'yamim actually mean the same thing. Ba b'yamim, he came in the days, meaning he was old. So ba here is past tense, just like zakin is past tense. Okay, let's look at pasuk bet in number 26. Vayikra Yoshua, Yoshua called l'chol Yisrael, to all of Israel, lizkinav, to Israel's elders, l'roshav, to Israel's heads, leaders, lishoftav. This is a participle. It's to Israel's judges, l'shotrav, to Israel's officers. Notice I have in both cases l'shoftav and l'shotrav. I have the O sound, the cholan, between the first two letters of my shoresh, right? Shin and fei over in the first case, shin and tet in the second case. And I have a possessive ending at the end, right? The vav at the end is the possessive ending, right? And what's that telling me? That I'm dealing with a participle that's functioning as a noun. Okay, so Yeshua calls to all the heads of Israel, Vayomer Alehem, and he said to them, Ani zakanti, I have become old, Bati bayamim. So the question about Bati, is that past or is that a participle? So Bati is pretty clear that it has to be past tense. It is not a participle because I have that T suffix. Okay, I have the T suffix, which tells me that I'm dealing with past tense. That's the suffix form. Okay, let's look at pasuk Gidalid. Hine anochi holech hayom b'derech kol haaretz. So here I have a participle, holech. Right here I am going today. B'derech kol haaretz is an expression for die. Here I'm going to die today, or I will die today very soon because I have hine. Okay, so either it's present or future tense. If it's future, it will be imminent, right? Here I will die very soon, or here I am going to die today. In pasuk Tetvav, v'haya. So what's v'haya? So haya is it was, but any vav before a past tense word flips it to future tense. It becomes it will be, right? Which is future tense. So it will be ka'asher ba aleichem, so ba, right? That's going to be my question if I'm dealing with past or participle. And I look at my clues that I mentioned before. Is there an ani or ata in the pasuk right before ba? No. Do I have ein right before it? No. Do I have a ha right before it? No. So when all other tricks failed, they don't work in the pasuk, I look at the other verbs, and I have one other verb that comes right before it, v'haya. What was v'haya we mentioned is future tense, right? So ba is probably going to be a participle describing the future. So it will be when kol hadavar hatov, all of the good, Hasher diber Hashem Elokechem alechem, that Hashem, your God, spoke alechem to you. When all of that good will come alechem on you, ... the following thing will happen. So because of the haya, right, ba is future tense, participle. Let's look at number 27. Ko amar Hashem, right, which is a prophecy. Upakadati al hayoshvim be'eretz Mitzrayim. Upakadati. So pakadati is to exact. I exacted punishment, past tense. Upakadati, any vav before past tense word is going to flip it to future tense. I will exact punishment. Al hayoshvim. Al hayoshvim. So what's hayoshvim? So hayoshvim is a participle. Is it a verb, a noun, or an adjective? So we have a hey before it, which tells me it cannot be a verb. I look at the word right before it, it's not a definite noun, which tells me that this is a noun. And when I translate participles functioning as nouns into English, I ask, who is the person doing the action? So here, yoshvim is like a dwellers, right? The people who dwell, or in better English would be like inhabitants. That would be better. So I will exact punishment on the inhabitants, Be'eretz Mitzrayim, in the land of Mitzrayim. Lo yihiyeh palit, there will not be a refugee. L'she'iri Yehuda, to the remaining ones of Yehuda. Haba'im. So my question is about the word haba'im. Is haba'im past tense, or is it a participle, and how do you know? Okay, so I look at the word haba'im and I have two clues that tell me that this is a participle. First of all, I have the hey prefix, right, which tells me that's a participle. It cannot have a the prefix before a verb. And the second clue is my im suffix, right? That im suffix is only for participles. Shomer, shomeret, shomerim, shomerot. It does not exist in past tense. So translate haba'im. Right? If it's a participle, it could be a noun, a verb, or an adjective. So I know right off the bat that it's not a verb because I have a hey prefix. And I know if it's a noun or an adjective by looking at the word that comes right before it, Yehuda. So Yehuda is a definite noun. So I have two nouns in a row that are definite. I have the ha-ha rule. Right? The ha-ha rule tells me that I'm dealing with a noun, adjective. So Yehuda is my noun, and haba'im is my adjective. And when I'm dealing with participles, what word do I insert in the middle? I add who or that. So it's the remaining ones of Yehuda who come lagor sham, to live there, be'eretz Mitzrayim, in the land of Egypt. We addressed the first three columns of this chart in previous clips. In this clip, we're going to address the last two columns, kum and sim. Okay, what type of shoresh are these words? Okay, kum is an example of an ayin vav shoresh. How about sim? Sim would be an ayin yud shoresh, meaning that the center letter is a vav for kum, and for sim it's a yud. Now, how would I conjugate them? So I would attempt to conjugate it following like what we had for kotev over here, right? Kotev. So I would insert my shoresh, let's take kum, okay? And then I try to put my vav in the middle like I have for kotev over here, right? So I try to throw in the vav. Can you say this word, right? No, you cannot. So I'd like to think about it as that double negative, right? And they cross each other out. So you're left with kam. For sim, you're left with sam. Do the plurals. For rabim, for masculine plural, all I do is I take the same stem from yachid and I add the im, ka, mim, right, my suffix. Similarly, I'd have sa, mim. And then for feminine plural, I would have ka, mot, and sa, mot. Okay, and then for feminine plural, so this is something I wouldn't expect. It would be kama and sama. So why do I have that kamathe suffix for kama and sama? Where did this kamathe suffix come from? After all, it's usually kotevet, right? My et suffix, right? So we mentioned that it's from, Old Biblical Hebrew of kotiva. So we have my kamatei suffix for kotiva, right? I'm going to see that reflected in kama and sama, just like I saw for osa, right? I saw that kamate suffix for osa as well. Okay, so that completes our participle conjugation chart that we've been building this unit. For some extra practice, let's find the shoresh. So in A, kamim, what's my shoresh? So the im is not part of the shoresh, right? I have kuf, vav, mem. How about for B, boneh? So here I have all three letters of my shoresh, bet, nun, hey. I just have that cholam because it's a participle. How about yodat? Same thing, yodalid ayin. I just have the guttural, which is why I get my a'at suffix. How about shar? So I only have two letters in my shoresh, so someone got left out, right? So I have my yud, shir, right? That's what the letter that got left out. It's so skinny it falls out, right? That yud got left out. How about zan? Similarly, right, for zan, I have beged kefet, that's why I have the dagesh, and I have that yud in the middle, right? Got left out. How about shava? So shava, based on the pattern we've been describing of ayin vav ayin yud, right? I have shin, vet, and in the middle I have my vav, shuv, right? And that would be feminine singular, something about return. How about samot? So I have a sin, right? And I have a mem. What goes in the middle? I have a yud in the middle for sim. How about oseh? Right, I have everything there. Ayin, sin, hey. No problem. How about ro'im? What got dropped from ro'im? I have a resh aleph, right? My im is my suffix. Who got dropped? Right? I have the hey got dropped. Okay. For J, my shoresh is for sholeach is shin lamed chet. No one got dropped. Kam for K, I have kuf mem, and I have a missing letter here, so it's going to be kum, right? Kuf vav mem. And how about L? I have sharot, shin, resh, and what got left out? I have my yud got left out. Okay, so you see here that the only letters that tend to get left out are yuds and vavs in the middle of a word, right, and hays at the end of a word. Okay, so that's how we know what the shoresh is when we're reading a pasuk. Here I have additional review and practice for conjugation. So number one, we guard is just standard shomerim. Okay. Number two, you write would be again standard for masculine singular ko tave, beged kefet at the beginning of the word. Okay, how about they walk feminine? Okay, so it's feminine plural, so it's holechot. And number four, you eat is ata, atem, it's plural. Ochelim. And how about five? So five I encounter my first exception. Avi knows. My shorsh is yud, dalid, ayin. So I get my cholam in the middle, like I'd expect for any good participle, and it rhymes with shomer, but I have a problem. I have my guttural, my ayin or chet as the last letter of my shoresh. So it becomes yodei, with my patach genuva. Similarly, for number six, I have she is sending, and my shoresh is shin, lamed, chet. So I get my vav in the middle because it's a participle. It's feminine singular, so I get my taf at the end. So I have a guttural as my chet, right? So my guttural is like their patachs right before it. And to make it nice and harmonious, it becomes shola chat. Number seven, they travel, right? Becomes no se'im. My guttural can handle a sounding shva, that's shvana, right before it. We open. Similarly, it can handle, right, let me first write it out, potechot, right, so I beged kefet, and my guttural here, right, just like I had with no se'im above, right, I have a guttural chet, and in both cases, right, my guttural can handle the shva that comes right before it. There's no problem there. Number nine, I am building, right, masculine singular. So it's similar to like shomer, but it becomes bo ne with that third dot. The segel because I have a silent hey. How about you see, masculine plural, right? You see, I have my shorish resh aleph hey, but because I have that suffix, my hey drops out and it becomes ro'im. I don't want to sound that hey when it's the last letter of a shoresh. Okay, she does. So I have ayin, sin, hey. It's a participle, so it gets that o in the middle, right? And then it's she does. So I don't get that at or et suffix. Instead, I get the kamatz hey, o sa. Okay, o sa. They ascend, feminine, plural. So the shorsh is ayin, lamed, hey. Okay, and I try to add that o suffix, and what happens? Would give the hey a sound. So my hey does not remain, it gets dropped, and it becomes o lot, right? My o sound, my cholam, because it's a participle. Let's look at 13. David is returning. So my shorish is shuv. And it's masculine singular, so I try to follow the shomer pattern. Does this work? It does not. So think about the double negatives. They cross each other out, and I'm left with shav. David shav. How about Devorah sings? So I have the shorish shir, right? I try to add my vav in the middle, right? And they cancel each other out. So I have the root, that I'm going to be dealing with, that I'm left with, is the shin and the resh, but I have its feminine singular, so it's going to become sha, ra. Okay. How about they judge? So my shorish is din. Okay. I try to add that o in the middle, and it doesn't work. I can't have that yod and that vav. That it doesn't work. They're both emo kriya. Doesn't work. So I'm left with dalit and nun. Okay, and I'm going to add the suffix for masculine plural, danim, and because it's beged kafet, it gets a zagesh, danim. How about number 16? You are getting up. I have kum, right, is my shoresh, and I try to add that vav in the middle, right, the cholam, doesn't work, they cancel each other out, and I'm left with, and it's feminine plural, so it's kamot. Okay, and that's how I conjugate it. So this concludes our study of participles. We saw how to translate and how to conjugate participles. We analyzed, particularly in Unit 1, how to translate participles into noun, verbs, and adjectives. We saw how to differentiate a verb into past, present, and future tense. We also learned how to conjugate participles. We learned how to conjugate them when we're dealing with a regular shoresh, when we're dealing with a lamed gronit, a final guttural, particularly an ayin or a chet as the last letter of the shoresh. We also saw how to conjugate participles when there is a hey as the last letter of the shoresh. And we also saw how to conjugate participles when there's a vav or yud in the middle of the shoresh. We also spend time learning how to differentiate an ayin vav or ayin shoresh when it's participle or past tense. So that concludes our study of participles from Units 1 and 2.